Hello and welcome to another session, or let's say the final one, in which we will be completing our ToDoist application. And in this, we'll be applying all the knowledge that we've gained in some of the previous sessions and the subtle exercises that we were doing, or let's say prerequisite training that we were doing, that was required for the final implementation that we need to execute for the final version of this application. So what all preparations and what all prerequisite training am I pointing towards? Let's see in the code sandbox. So here is the starting version that you will be getting reference to. In here, the last version, I know that we have quite some time since we worked on the last iteration of our ToDoist. So in this one, apart from the one that we have discussed, I have just added this another file here called create area, and nothing is extra here. This just has a form in which you have an input area called, which is having a placeholder of title, and then you have another text area. In this you have these things like write something here, and this consists of 3 rows. So 3 rows signifies that it will take these 3 lines of space. So like if you keep on writing, so it will allow you to write up till 3 lines like this, and then it will move up. So this is basically a simple hard-coded a little text area like this, in which we have this button called add, and I've applied some styling to it that you'll be able to find inside styles.css. Apart from that, all of these app.jsx, footer, header and node, all of these we have already created them in the previous iteration of this application. So what are the instructions that we have? So first of all, in this one we will apply a learning in order to create the final version. So if we see at the initial sandbox, we can only see 2 tasks there. The number one says implement the add a node functionality, and the second one says implement the delete node functionality. So what do we mean by these? So add node functionality means, let me just demonstrate you. This is the final version that we are expecting from you. If for example someone is writing something like this is title and this is content, and once you hit this add button, the initial or this work area, which consists of this text area and this input field of title and content, this should get reset to its initial form. You must have now a separate individual card. Let's add one more as well. Okay, so this way you get a separate card consisting of the title and the content typed by the user, along with this delete button. So whatever data you are creating, basically you are creating these little tasks consisting of titles and this additional information that we'll refer to as content. And with the clicking of this add button, they get added as different cards. And if I try to click on this delete button, we want them to be completely dropped from whatever storage structure we are using. So you have 2 options to attempt this little practice session of ours, or let's say this challenge of ours. Either you can pause now and give it a go, because whatever, I promise you, whatever functionality that we'll be using in the completed version of this will be precisely the same, or let's say will be a subset of whatever we have previously learned. There will be nothing new. Or the second option is you can stay with me and I can further deep dive into these tasks, creating some subtasks as to what we need to do. So for those who want to work on this now, pause this and give it a go. So meanwhile, I fork a version, since this is going to be a relatively longer session, so I will split it into 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. So let's talk about these instructions step by step. So in the add node functionality, what all are the things that you'll be expected to do? The number one will be to create a constant. And which kind of constant am I talking about? The stateful one. All right, constant which keeps track of which tracks title and content. And you might be able to guess which kind of constant I'm talking about here. So the number one thing is creation of such constant. The second thing that we need to do is to pass the new task back to app component. So which means that, like we saw previously, when we are writing some logic and we created or we had some storage structure in an external component and we want to pass it back to its parent component, which usually is app component. So the second task will include passing that new task back to the parent component or the app component. Now, once we are inside this app component and we get hold of this new task, so we'll be required to add this new task to an array. Again, this we have seen previously. Inside the app component only, we need to create an array, and inside that we need to add this new task that we get from this external component. And finally, from this array, we need to render separate task elements, which means once we have this array, inside this whatever new tasks we have pushed, we now need to extract these tasks, take these individual tasks one by one and display them as separate cards like we just saw. So this will be the breakup of the implementation of the add node functionality. Now let's talk about how we can break the delete node functionality. So the number one will include call from node, because the delete button, as you can see here inside this note, let me first complete this. So as you saw that these cards that we created just here, okay, inside these cards we need to make a call from this card one, this external component which consists of that delete button, and we want that call to trigger call from node that triggers delete function. All right, so step one will be to make a call from node that will trigger our delete function, and the second one will be, and this is a hint as well, the usage of filter method to delete tasks, which means which tasks we are talking about deleting, the tasks that on which the delete button has been clicked. Okay, so the implementation of the delete functionality will consist of these two steps. Now inside this function node as well, let me include one more thing here which I think I missed. I am creating a button here, not button, and I'm calling this button. Okay, so this is basically included in the starter files only. So basically, when I was talking that some trigger that should be fired upon the clicking of this delete button, I'm talking about this delete button. So I think we have these sub instructions now, and you can finally give this a go. So pause this now and give it a go. All right, so let's see the solution step by step. Now if we head over inside create area, we need to save whatever we type in. Let's reload this once. Even the static one, this should come some static version of this app should appear here like this. So what I'm talking about is we need to save whatever we type both inside these input field of that says title and this text area that says this write something here, which we will refer to as content. So let's do this. I'm going to create a constant called task, and I'll call the setter of this set task, and we'll make use of useState hook, and initially this task will be okay. So see one thing, there are two options. Either you can create two separate constants, one that could be dealing with the title section, whatever you type here, and another constant that deals with something that is typed here. But since both of them are basically related to the same component, so we know we should always club together whatever is similar. So we'll make this task an object instead of a simple variable. So we'll say that this task object will consist of two properties, one called title and another called content, and both of them will be initialized empty. The next thing that we should do is just after name, we can bind this to the value attribute. Now remember this text area, which it will behave similarly to whatever functionalities we have been using with the input area. So in order to make this a controlled React component and to have a single source of truth, we need to bind this input with the title. So I will call it task.title, and I will bind this to task.content. Okay. The next thing we need to do is we want these to fire a function as soon as we write something inside this. Okay. So I need to add this on change in both of them, and the function that will be called upon the firing of this on change, let's call our function handle change and make this on change equals to this in both of these input field and the text area. So you can see first we have binded task.title and task.content to both of these title and content spaces respectively, and then we are saying that on change, whenever there's a change with these areas or whatever, or if anyone starts typing in these, we should be firing up this handle change function, or this handle change function should be executed. So now inside this handle change, we know that an event gets passed over this, and let's make use of the destructuring that we studied. Sorry, we are actually pointing to an object now. So we know that this event gets passed over as soon as this on change method gets fired, and event.target will point to whichever among these actually cause this handle change function to get executed. And then since both of them have this name and value attributes, and remember this name of both this input and text area, I have kept them exactly the same as the properties of this object. Why so? Because we'll be using it to directly update them in the near future. So always remember this name, it should not be like title 1 or title 2 or anything ABCD or something. It should be precisely the same as these two key value pairs inside our task object. Now in here, what do we want is, we'll make use of set task setter, and once you write something inside this, we want the title and content to store that change, whatever change is caused by you typing some content inside this. And how do we do this? I don't think I will need to explain this because we have gone through this n number of times now. So we'll try to retain the previous version of this object, and then we'll return ... making use of the spread operator. Alright, so this will retain the initial version of this object, and then we will update the name not equals to colon to the value. Alright, so just now the reason why I said this name here should be exactly same to this is because we are now referring it dynamically, that we are referring to this name. And the reason why we append these brackets in here is because we don't want another property of name string to get added here, and instead we want this name, whatever it consists of. For example, if this title space fired this handle change, then this title property will update and content will update for this one. So this will ensure that it identifies the constant name and not the string name. So we have already seen this in quite a number of times in our previous session. And meanwhile, this is loading. Let's try to see whether whatever we did here is currently working or not. Now heading over inside the React developer tools, and inside this app, if I try to write something and you point to this create area, you'll be able to see that it is getting updated here, both the title and the content. So that means the code that we wrote up till here is working just fine. Okay, now we need to pass this task back to the app component. So the first subtask is completed, which was creation of this constant, which is tracking title and content, as we have seen just now. The second task says that we need to pass this task back to its parent component or the app component. Okay, so now let's head over to this create area, and we know that we want this to get passed over as soon as this button is clicked. So we'll make use of the onClick method, and we'll create a function called submit task. Let us create a function here, submit task. So as soon as we click this button, which button am I talking about? The add button that you see. Okay, both of them are loading right now. So I am talking about this add button. As soon as we click this, we want this submit task to get fired up. Now one thing guys, remember that this button here is inside a form. Alright, and as soon as you click this button inside a form, you can see that this app get refreshed, which we do not want. Alright, as soon as you write something in it like this way, and if you press this button, it will get refreshed. So as we have seen previously, in order to prevent it from getting refreshed, we'll make use of the event.prevent default method. Alright, and let's add these braces in order to signify that it is a function. Now when I hit save now, and if I write something and if I click add, you can see now the default property or the default behavior of this page, which was to refresh, it is now stopped. Okay, now to get back to the app from this external component, we need to pass the concern function as a prop. So inside this create area, I'm going to create another prop called onAdd, and I'm going to make it equal to a function called add task. And let's try to initialize this function add task here like this. Okay, now inside this submit task, above the event.prevent default, always remember whenever you are using this, make sure to put it at the very end of your function. Okay, and now we'll make use of this props dot on add, and okay, let me write props here and props here. Okay, now we'll make use of this on add function, since we are passing add task as a prop called on add. Now when I say props.onAdd, it is actually making a call to this add task function right here. Okay, so that means now we'll be able to call this add task in this app component from our external component, this create area. So if you want, you can further verify this by console logging something. For example, here inside add task, let me write task here, and then I can console log this task to again cross check whether this is working or not. So if I write something here like this, and I'm opening my console, and then I click this add button, you can see that whatever we typed here, the title and the content is getting logged. And there is only one log statement that I've used in the entire project. So this verifies that yes, we are able to make a call to this add task function inside app component from our external component. Okay, let's head over to the subtasks. So now we are able to pass this new task back to our parent component or the app component. The next task says that we need to add this new task to an array. So let's head over inside app component and create an array called task A. So A is for short for array, and I'm calling this set task A as its setter. Oops, not use callback, excuse me, use state this way. And initially we'll keep this tasks A array of ours as empty. Okay, so right now what we did here, we just created an array, and this is the set task array. In here, what we want is, in here, if we see, it was to add this new task to an array. We created a new array, and then in order to add it, we'll make a call to this setter called set task A, catch hold of the previous version of this by making use of this arrow function, and as a return statement, we'll again make use of the spread operator. So this will say whatever initial version or one version before the change, retain that version of that array by this spread operator. And in order to add this task as a new entry inside our array, we'll write comma task. So this code will now help us to add this task that we sent using this props.onAdd. So let's see, props.onAdd will actually make a call to add task. Further, it is sending a data called task, which is actually the new task, consisting of both the changes that we made inside this title space and the content space. And then using the task set task A setter, we'll first retain the initial value of the array, and then we'll add the new task that is passed over from create area component. So I believe you are able to make connections with every new line of code we are writing. And the reason I say this is because we have already practiced this in several previous sessions. So latest example being this task addition inside our array. Okay, so up till now, you would have realized that we haven't wrote a single code that is of a new concept from whatever we have studied in the previous ones. So if you have a look here, we have completed 3 subtasks and 1 subtask of the add node functionality, and 2 of these of delete node functionality are yet to be completed. So I will be ending the part 1 of this ToDoist app optimization here to avoid making this session a very lengthy one. And in the upcoming session, we'll complete the remaining part and see our awesome ToDoist application working in all its glory. So I'll be attaching both the starter code and the code that you get up till the completion of this part 1 along in the course resources. So make sure to check them out, and we'll complete the remaining one in the upcoming session. So I'll see you there.